Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me at our community share. Today we are doing animal communication with Elizabeth Wallace, and she will be telling her story and talking about her gifts and sharing them with all of us at NLBP. So go ahead, Elizabeth, you're up.
Okay, awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Wallace, and I am an animal communicator. So I actually do speak to animals. I connect with them intuitively, and they talk to me. Sometimes I get images, sometimes I get full-on conversations. Other times I get what I call energetic downloads. So I'll just have a knowing or an understanding of what a situation is or what might be going on. So I'm going to start with my story, because the number one question I get when people find out that I do this is, have I always known that I could do this? So the answer is yes, but I took like a 40-year detour, like a 4-decade detour into getting back into it. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and it never occurred to me that everyone couldn't do this, that everyone didn't hear their animals or go out in nature and hear different animals talking to them or chirping at them. And we had a family cat that had stopped eating, and nobody seemed to know why. And my mom came in one night, and we were getting ready to say my prayers, and she said, you know, if Patsy's not feeling better tomorrow, I'm going to have to take her to the vet. I said, oh, well, I know why she's not eating. She doesn't like her food. She said there's a tin taste to the food. They must have changed the packaging on the food, because she was getting canned food. And so my mother said, well, how do you know that? And I said, well, because she told me. My mother proceeded to have a full-on meltdown when I told her I could hear the cat, and the cat was talking to me. And she's like, oh, you can't tell anybody this. And, you know, we're Catholic, and this Catholic girls don't do this. And, you know, this is so wrong. And so my father got involved, and my father sat me down and said, you know, it's one thing to have an overactive imagination. You can't make up lies. And so I very quickly learned that it wasn't really accepted or safe to talk about this in my family or to explore this gift. And kind of over the next, I don't even remember when the last time was that I did it, but I had totally, by the time I was in, you know, probably first grade, completely forgotten that I could do this. I always was very intuitive with animals and felt drawn to them, but didn't hear them and connect with them the way I do now. So literally fast forward 40 years later, and I have a soul dog who was the last of 3 golden retrievers that I had. I had brothers and sisters, and I had to put her to sleep. And I was just devastated. She had been really close with my father and my best friend, both of whom had died not long before Olivia, the dog, died as well. And so I was really struggling, not just with the grief of Olivia, but also the grief of my father and my best friend. And I was doing all the different things that I could. I didn't really understand how grief worked, and I didn't understand that I needed to process it. And I just, at that point, I didn't really meditate. But I had a friend who suggested I might want to try meditating, and because I wasn't sleeping, and I was just spending, you know, my days and nights crying and feeling really like I had let this dog down, and she had cancer. And so I was meditating one night, and I think I just was so depleted that all my defenses were down. And I kind of heard, it was over my right shoulder, and I heard this, I'm still here. And I knew, I still get chills when I tell the story. I knew it was her. I didn't know how I knew it was her, but I was like, oh my God, I haven't even been drinking. Like, where is this coming from? So, but all I knew was that it gave me some relief. It gave me relief from the grief, even if it was just for a little, you know, a short moment in time in my day. So I started meditating every night, and you know, I was clutching her collar to my heart, and I'm like, okay, where are you? Like, you know, this is I want to hear you. And as I slowly started to relax into this, I started to hear her, and what she said to me was like, you've always been able to talk to animals, you just forgot. And then it started coming back to me slowly. And once that channel was opened, once that sort of connection to the animal world was open and the spirits, it was just like, I was just inundated with like, I'd walk outside and I'd hear the squirrels talking, and there was a raccoon trying to talk to me, and, there was deer that were I was kind of like, oh my gosh. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I didn't understand energy management or how to allow that information in. So I took some courses with a well-known animal communicator, and really started to develop the skill, because it is a skill. And I do believe that we all have intuition. It shows up in different ways, but it is a skill, and it's something that we can all develop. And I started taking the courses, and through practice with other people, I started trusting the information that I was getting, and really just started talking to any animal that I could, and talking to different people. And I never really had any desire to do it as a business. But at the time I had a retail business. It was just really fun for me. And it was super cool. So I did that. I did readings for people. Mostly it was like friends of friends, or friends' animals. It was always, I got hooked up with a couple different rescues, but it wasn't anything that I was really doing. Like I said, it wasn't really so much a business. But slowly but surely, I started to feel in my retail business that I just wasn't fulfilled. And I was selling souvenirs and T-shirts in Boston, and it was a very successful business. But I just I started waking up in the morning going like, I don't think it's my soul's purpose to like go schlep souvenirs and T-shirts to tourists. So I sold that business, and then have spent the last 5 years hiding from actually doing this, because I realize it's a little bit, it's kind of scary to follow your soul's purpose, right? It's like all my stuff started coming up. I'm like, well, wait a minute, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And how come I'm getting hit with all this emotional stuff that I have to work through and process? But I'm still processing, but I'm going forward anyway. So that is my story. That's what's brought me here. I can connect with any animal under any circumstances. All I really need is either a name or a photograph. It's mostly through intention. I actually will tell you, the less information I know, the better, because all the information that I get comes through filters. So they come through the filter of my human experience. And if I don't know anything about the animal or about the situation, it's much easier for me to trust the information that I'm getting and not prejudge that information as I get it. And a lot of times, every time, I believe, and what the animals have taught me, is that our animals come into our lives as our teachers and our guides. So anytime I do a reading for someone or I connect them with an animal, there's always a deeper meaning to what is going on. So if the animal has an unwanted behavior, they're trying to help their human in some way. And it's just really been interesting for me, and really fascinating to see all the ways that our animals help us. And I really have found, the more that I'm doing this, I'm really starting to focus on doing work with animals that are at their end of life. So they're either in a hospice type situation, and it's known that they don't have much longer in their physical bodies, or what I'm finding is I'm really being drawn toward doing work with people who have lost their animals and are going through the grief process, because animals have such a profound connection with humans. And if you get that, and you're somebody that really loves animals and has that deep connection with your animal, it can be a really lonely time when you lose your animal, not just because you've lost your animal and that connection, but a lot of times the people around you, your loved ones, family, friends, even coworkers, don't understand. And it can be very isolating for people to not understand or to not feel supported in their grief. So one of the ways also that animal communication really helps with people who are grieving is that I can connect with the animal in spirit. So once they've left their physical body, now I call it transitioning. So for me, and this is what the animals have told me, they don't look at dying the way that humans do. They look at it that they sort of hop into a body and they hop out. They hop into a body, they hop out. And they've likened it to me as if though it's hopping onto an airplane, going to vacation somewhere, and then coming back. So that's how they look at when they're in spirit, they decide they're going to go to earth and incarnate. And then when their time is up, they just go back into spirit and they will eventually incarnate again.
Well, he has questions.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Ask away.
So many.
By all means.
And I think it will help people watching this. So first I want to go back to your experience when you were learning about this. Did you have a guide or someone that kind of mentored you into learning more about it? Do you know what I'm saying? Or did you just develop it on your own and you figured it all out?
So I took some courses.
Okay.
I took animal communication level 1 and level 2.
Okay.
And both of those were 8-week courses, and they were with groups of people that were also in the same situation that I was.
Gotcha.
So there was a lot of practice we did a lot of practicing, and like we had actual homework where we would practice with other people's animals. So that allowed me to understand that the information that I was getting was accurate.
Okay.
Right. So I could, like, let's say I was practicing with you, Camille, and you had a dog that was, digging in the backyard and burying bones. And so I connect in with the dog and I go, he's showing me this area in the backyard where there's like something he's digging for, or there's a bone, or you go, oh my God, right. Like he does that. So then I could start trusting, because a lot of the information that I get is through images. Okay. So sometimes there's some interpretation that's involved, not always, but each animal is different, just like each human is different. Some are like chatty Cathys and you can't shut them up. And others are very quiet and don't want to really talk. They might show you images, or it's more, you have to piece more things together. So having that feedback from somebody who was, the instructor was a well-known communicator, and then being in groups of people and getting that feedback sort of boosted my confidence to knowing, like, okay, this is real. This is like, I'm not making this up. I'm not, not having some kind of psychotic break.
Can you tell when you connect with an animal if they're alive or transitioned?
Yes.
With us here, you can tell the difference.
So I can tell you that was actually one of the things I was going to talk about next. So what happens for me, and it's different for everybody, but when I connect in with an animal, I get, if they're in their physical body and they're healthy and they're strong, their energy is in their physical form. Let's say that there's an animal that is sick. Most animals that are sick start the transition process long before we recognize it. So I would, what I see is I'll see a cord, and it's like it usually is filled with color. And there's like a cloud above their head. And depending upon how the cloud attaches or how the cloud presents to me is how much energy has left their physical body. So that's how I can tell when they're transitioning.
And when you're explaining about reincarnating and visiting, that's exactly actually how I see humans doing it as well.
Yes.
How I understand it, like it's all the same world. So, but I've always had this big question. Do animals stay animals? Do they change form? It's just like humans stay humans?
So there's
there's
a misconception that animals, it depends. For the most part, yes. But it's not because they're considered like a lower form. It's that the animals don't really have a big desire to be humans.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah. So occasionally so our animals have soul contracts with us, just like we have soul contracts with humans.
Gotcha.
And like my dog, Olivia, travels in each lifetime with me. I know she won't reincarnate with me in this lifetime. She's told me that, but I've actually had memories of her being in past lifetimes with me. And she told me she's been with me like my entire incarnation as a human in some form of an animal or another. So animals, people always think like, oh, when you're an animal and you figure it out, like you get to bump up to the next level to become a human. Animals don't have a big desire to become humans because they're really here to help us figure it out. So they might not all come back, like they might change forms. They don't always come back as a dog, although some of them do. But for the most part, they stay animals.
Cool. I asked because I had my Akashic records done, and I was told that I have an animal that follows me, and they were like a horse way back when, and now they were a dog when I was a child, and I don't have any animals now. But I thought that was I had never heard of that. So
there are certain animals that will come back, that will reincarnate and come back during your same lifetime. But there are if you are connected to animals and you're somebody that's a strong bond that you have, there's usually one animal that comes once in your lifetime and helps you and then leaves. So in my case with Olivia, I asked her if she was going to reincarnate and she said no, because she actually helps me more from the other side.
Well, that's interesting. I'm not particularly fond of it. Not fond. I don't have any connection to them. Oddly fish, but not like I grew up with dogs, and I had a gerbil that I loved when I was a kid, but that was it. I've never been overly attached to animals.
So
I probably would if I had one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
curiosity.
So one of the things I thought, does anybody else have any questions? Okay, so I'm just going to give a couple of examples of different readings that I've done, because I think that helps to understand like how animal communication can really help in certain circumstances and situations. So the first one I'm going to tell you about are Mandy and Rusty. And Mandy and Rusty were rescue dogs. Their owner was elderly and passed away. And so a woman that had a small rescue took them in and was trying to find a home for them. And she had somebody that was perfect on paper. And so she said, will you connect in with them and make sure that this is the right match? So I connected in, and the goal was to adopt both of them out together into the same home, because they had been together their entire lives. And Rusty was the more vocal animal. I talked to Mandy a little bit, but mostly it was Rusty. And he was very clear with me that he did not like this woman. He didn't want to go with this woman. He had no intention of going with this woman. And so the lady who ran the rescue was having a hard time understanding this, because on paper, this woman was like the perfect adopter. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, what Rusty is telling me is that the next time this woman comes, he's not going to engage with her. He doesn't want anything to do with her. As a matter of fact, he's showing me an image. He's going to go stand in the corner with his butt sticking out to her. And sure enough, that's exactly what he did.
Like a teenager.
Like a child. So I said, Rusty is asking you to give this a couple of weeks, because he says the right person is out there. You just have to be patient and wait. Mm-hmm. So thankfully, this woman was open to using animal communication. And sure enough, in a couple of weeks, a different lady came along who on paper didn't look as perfect as the first adopter, but just a perfect match all around for this family and these two dogs. And that was like so wonderful to be able to be a part of that, and to know that like this family got the right dogs and the dogs got the right family.
Oh,
Um,
beautiful story.
So, and the second one, so this goes a little, oh, Donna, yes.
Yeah.
Did you ever find out, did Rusty say what was wrong with the other person? That
Yes.
he had
So she really liked Rusty. Rusty was a younger dog and he was a beautiful Irish setter. And Mandy was older and she wasn't quite as physically attractive. Like she had like more matted fur and she was actually a smaller dog. I think she was a Maltese. And she had tear stains in her eyes and the woman just never connected with Mandy. It was mostly Rusty that she wanted. So Rusty was concerned that this woman wasn't going to love Mandy and be as affectionate to her as she would have been with him. So that was why he wanted the rescue to wait. So, and so an example of how like at end of life, the animal communication can really help is I had a woman contact me who had a cat and a Sebastian. And she said, you know, I think that we're getting to the point where we might be keeping him going more for us than for him. And so when I connected in with Sebastian, it was, I mean, most of his energy was up over his head. Like he was really struggling to stay alive. And so when I told her this, I said, you know, he's ready to go. He's just waiting for you to be ready. And the lady had said to me, the client said to me, she said, well, I want him to have like a really, I keep waiting for him to have a good day so he can have like a good send off basically. So Sebastian, as I was talking to him, like I could literally, he took his pause and was like pulling his energy back into his body and said, I'm going to rally for a day. And here's what I want tuna fish. I want to go sit out on the porch in the sun and I want to sit in their lap. He was not allowed to sit in a certain chair. He said, I want to sit in your lap on this chair. And so, and then I'm ready to go. And so they did all those things for him. And the next day they brought him in to the vet to be euthanized. But it was really a situation that allowed the humans to feel a sense of closure and to know that he had a say in how he went out. And I think that helped them. It certainly didn't alleviate their grief, but I think it helped them to cope with it a little bit better. And then the last example I want to give you, this is something I was personally involved in. I had clients that were, they did not know what I did. They did not know I could talk to animals. These were just people that had asked me if I would watch their dogs while they traveled. And they were away, they were out on the West Coast and they had 3 dogs. One of them was a senior dog who had a lot of health issues, but when they left, she was stable. I mean, she required a lot of care, but she was still stable. And they had been gone for about 10 days and it was a Sunday and it was very clear that the dog was taking a turn for the worse. And so I connected in with her and she said, I'm ready to go. And so I called the people, her humans, and I said, I think you guys might want to try and get back here because I think the dog is ready to go. And so they were going to try and get a flight out the next morning. And I connect back in with the dog after I hung up the phone with them. And the dog told me, she goes, no, I'm going to go before they get home because they won't be able, it will be too hard for them to be here and be the ones to actually make the decision to bring me to the vet. So I said, okay. And I was okay with that. That didn't bother me. And I really believe that animals choose when they go. And it happens exactly the way it's supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we went into the vet the next day and I connected in with her as she was transitioning. And I said, is there something that I can say to your humans that will allow them to feel better about not being here? So as she transitioned, she gave me the most beautiful image. She said, this is my body. And she showed me like this, almost looked like what you would expect like a toxic wasteland to look like. Like it was very barren and black and like there were these dead plants that were just sort of like fallen over limp.
Mm.
And then as her spirit left her body, she showed me this, everything just exploded into technicolor. And it was this beautiful butterfly that was coming out. And there were like all these like shimmering lights and just really beautiful pastels. And she said, I want you to explain this to them. And I want you to tell them that this is what every day was like with them. And she was severely mistreated. She had been used as in a breeding program and had been dumped in the woods, basically. And she had lived in the woods for like a year by herself before somebody was able to trap her and catch her. And these people just gave her like the most amazing life. So that was just such an incredible gift to be able to share with them and help them understand this is, even though you weren't here, this was her experience. And this is exactly how it was supposed to, because now they know what I do because I had to tell them, it's like, explain to them how I know this information. So those are some examples of how animal communication can help people in different situations, and especially I think with grief and being able to move through that and understand that your animal is really still with you, just in a different form.
It sounds to me just exactly the same as the human experience, except that
very
you read it through. Yeah, it's exactly
very
how I feel the human. Yeah.
Yes.
Paul, you had something?
Do you have a question?
Yeah. So for animals that have transitioned, if somebody were to ask you to, find out about them, can you always connect? Or is it possible the animal has, I don't know.
So yes, I can always connect, but there are different. So when an animal first transitions, it usually takes between 2 to 4 weeks for their energy to settle into the non-physical. I can still get a connection, but it's not going to be as clear as it would be when they were either in physical form or they're in the transition process. That would be the first one. I don't know if I think your question might be more like if it's an animal that had transitioned a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I can definitely still connect. It can get a little bit interesting if the animal has taken on a physical form again. I've had that happen. That takes a little bit more of a deep dive to understand that. I mean, I can tell that they're in a physical body, but they're having a different experience. So we have to sort of say, okay, can we put that experience on hold and talk about your experience with this human, or because it's usually a human that wants me to connect. So, but yes, you can always connect.
Awesome.
So there's no time too far to possibly connect. 10 years.
No. So, I mean, I had a, once I started to realize that I could do this, I connected with all the animals that I had in my childhood that are no longer here. I don't do it as regularly as I do with some of the other animals that I feel maybe had more significance in terms of helping guide and lead me. But yeah, there's one that I had. There was a kitten that my parents had gotten for me that actually passed away in my bed when I was in 5th grade, and we'd only had her for a couple of weeks, and I connected with her and asked her what happened. Like, did we do something wrong? Was there anything? And I was able to connect in with her pretty quickly and get some answers.
What were the answers?
She was the bridge to me getting the next cat. So she said if she hadn't come in, if there hadn't been that 2 or 3 week span, I would have gotten a different kitten. And I wasn't meant to have a different kitten. I was meant to have a cat named Butterscotch. So, and he was a little bit older. He wasn't a full kitten when I got him. So, Heather?
Elizabeth, I have a question. So if the animal, had transitioned a long time ago, and then they reincarnated in a different body, you can tell that too, but you can still talk to their spiritual self?
Yes.
And
Yes.
can you tell like where they are now, or who they're incarnated into, or what type of animal body they're in, or do they go in different, like the dogs become cats? And
So sometimes, yes, it depends on what they want to show me. Like if somebody were to connect, like I have a dog who I've had people connect in with her that didn't know that she was a dog and think that she's a horse because she has a lot of mare energy. So sometimes it's more about the energy that they present. But I can always ask them, like, what form are you in now? I mean, most animals are pretty forthcoming. The one thing that I will say they're not forthcoming about is if there's been trauma, if they've been abused or mistreated, they almost universally never want to talk about that. They'll, they might want to say like, this is what I need going forward, but they don't want to talk about what had happened. So, most of them are pretty forthcoming. So that if you had like one that, if you had an animal and you think that they may have reincarnated at this point, by this point, we could just ask, like, are you in a new form, and are you able to separate out? Can we talk to you about your, like, if it was someone that you knew personally, an animal that you knew personally, we could say, could we talk about your time when you were with Heather? Is that it? Are you willing to do that? Is that something that is possible for you to do right now? And then we could ask them, like, could you show me, you can do remote viewing through animals, so they can show you their where they are, like the house they're in, or you can do that a lot with lost animals. Can you show me what you're seeing? So you could ask them, like, what do you, where are you? What are you in a field? Are you in a house? Are you, so it's hard I can't give a definitive answer because it depends on the animal, but I think in most cases you would be able to do that. So, sure. Paul.
So this is a serious question. It's going to sound kind of, when you talk to them, they speak English?
Yes.
They don't speak cat, or they don't speak Spanish? I mean,
So remember, it's coming through my filter, so it's
Yeah.
going to be what I'm going to understand. So somebody in China could have that was able to do this, could connect in with the same animal. This is super cool. There was a woman in my one of the classes that I took who was Japanese, and her English was very limited. She was very intelligent. She was learning English as she was taking the class with us. But it was fascinating to me that, I mean, when she spoke, it was very broken English that, she would use. And when we would do homework, if it was written, she would have somebody translate it for her because otherwise it was hard to understand. But she would get the same stuff that we got in Japanese that we got in English, because it's the same information. It's just coming through. It's going to be presented to me in a way that I understand. So I'll give you an example. If I do a body map on an animal to see what they're feeling in their physical body, if they have a blood sugar issue or they're diabetic, I feel my whole body feels gritty, like I have sand in my veins, is the best way I can describe it. I know for me that means that there's a possibility they're diabetic or there's some sort of blood sugar issue. I have a friend who does this, who will connect in with the animal, and if it's a blood sugar issue, she will see an insulin needle, and the insulin needle being injected into the horse. or I say a horse because the last one she had was a horse, into the animal. So it just, everybody can get the same information, but we get it, like if you connected in with animals, you would get it, and you might get it in a different way than I would, but the end
the same
result
message.
is exactly, the message is the same.
That's a
So.
fantastic explanation too.
Karen,
So I have a question for you.
sure.
If an animal has transitioned, so I lost a couple of dogs fairly recently. If they've transitioned and have reincarnated, and somehow in the universe we reconnected physically, would they recognize us?
So they would know. You might not know that it's them, but they, yes, they would know, because they're, well, let me rephrase that. Their higher self would know and your higher self would know, right? So animals in their physical form are very similar to humans in their physical form, right? They still have the 3D, like they still have behaviors that might not be wanted. They still have their physical needs that need to be met. I haven't done a lot of them, but the ones that I've done where I've connected with an animal that was in a different body, that had transitioned and was now in a new body. There was one lady who contacted me and she said, I swear this dog is my neighbors have a new dog. I swear it's my old dog. I swear it is. I swear it is. And it was.
Oh my.
And she felt very drawn to it. It was like 3 or 4 years apart, but and they were really good friends. She felt very drawn to the dog and she couldn't understand why. So I think it's more like an intuitive type, like we know there's something about you that's familiar or that we like, more so than, oh my God, I know that's my old human, like, and I'm going to go up to them and I don't know if that, I feel like
No, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have a video playing in the background. I was kind of curious. I had a lot of the same questions, so that was really helpful. But I was kind of curious, does it work if it's not your pet? Like the neighbor's dog keeps running over to my house. Can I find out why she keeps running away?
Yeah, so that's
Does that
a
make
great
sense. Like, or you see somebody or somebody else had a pet and their pet was sick, and you want to be able to either put them in touch with you or rest assured like what was actually happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I personally believe whenever it's possible, I mean, obviously animals in nature are a little bit different. But if there's a human attached to the animal, like a human guardian, I personally believe whenever it's possible that you need to get permission from their human in order to connect in with them. But to answer your question, yes, I can connect with any animal. I don't, for me, that it's an ethical issue in terms of connecting with an animal. I find lost animals all the time. They just come across my path everywhere, like dogs. I'll be driving down the street, there's a dog there. I don't hesitate in those moments. If there's not a caller or a place, I will connect in and be like, can you show me what house you live in? Are are we close? Are we, like, in that case, I don't have a problem connecting in because it's like for the safety of the animal. But yes, I could connect in, like if you had, like it said, like this dog just keeps showing up in my yard. My guess would be in a situation like that. To me, I believe anytime an animal comes into our experience, they have a message for us. Whether we hear it or not is a different story, but I believe that they have a message for us. So in a situation like that, I would say a dog coming into your yard, like repeatedly running away, it would be that, they probably have a message for you. So yes, like I would definitely be able to connect in. It would probably be the kind of thing that I would say I would prefer to have, like the humans approval first, or at least say, you know, they could say, it's okay if you find out why the dog keeps running away, or if that makes sense. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
It does. Yeah, I think it does. So yeah, it does.
Cool. Okay. I don't know who went first, so I'll do Donna, then I'll do Paul.
Okay, I'll just say this, Gail, the dog's coming to your house because you need to bury the bodies deeper. Go deeper.
Most of, I mean, on a side note, most of the time, whenever I see a dog specifically on our street, I'll always bring them into our yard or bring them home. But the lady that was behind us, her dog gets out all the time. She's not coming to me, but she's always escaping. And so I was just kind of curious, like I could tell her, say, hey, I know someone who can communicate to the animals. Do you want to find out what she's doing and where she's going? Because she's just wandering. Ooh, sorry. So
whenever an animal, even when an animal is quote unquote lost, there's a reason why they go missing, or if this dog is leaving her yard or leaving her human, there's probably a lesson that she's trying to get her human to learn. A lot of times in those, I don't know this, I'm not connected in, I don't know this, but I can tell you a lot of times in those cases, it's that they want the human to expand out of their comfort zone. So they keep leaving like their perimeter, because the message is, we want you to, like, when you expand outside of your comfort zone, we'll stop leaving where we're supposed to be. So.
Thank you. That's awesome.
You're
all
welcome.
of it. Totally fascinated.
Thank you. Donna.
Okay, so you find a lost animal and you ask it where it lives, and he tells you, and you knock on the door and you say, your dog told me this was its house.
No, I don't. I just say, I've had that happen a couple times where they didn't have a caller on, or they had a caller, but they didn't have any way to, you know, a phone number or anything. So if they show me like a house, or like one time this tiny little dog like just was running in the street, and I'm like, can you show me where you live? And she showed me this like really, it was like this hot pink door, right? And I knew exactly what house it was, because everybody talks about the hideous hot pink door that these people had in the house, right? So I just walked up and I knocked on the door and I said, I said, I think I may have seen your dog here before. I said, I remembered your pink door. I think I may be off, but you know, I said, my gut's telling me that this is where the dog lives. And then I give them back the dog. So.
Sweet.
Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Did Donna have a follow-up? Or is she frozen?
Did that answer your question, Donna?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure.
All right, so two-part question. Number one, how do we book a session? And then number two, when we have a session, obviously we'll be remote. Do I give you the name and the type of animal, and then you just find him or her, or how do you know it's the right one for me? Right. So if I said Trixie, well, there's probably a billion dogs named, 100 dogs named Trixie or something. Like, what's the process for you to know that this is the right animal for this person? Like, how do you find them?
Sure. So that's a great question. So I'll answer the first one, your first question, because that's easiest first. You could just go straight to my website, which is elizabethwallace.com, and you can book a session there. And anybody who loves the website, Paul did it, and I've gotten many compliments on it. So all my contact information is on there, my phone number, my email, or you can just go ahead and book a session and it will bring you right to the calendar. So when I do a session, if I'm going to do an actual like hour-long session with somebody, I usually spend about 15 or 20 minutes meditating. So I make sure that I'm clear, and I like to think of myself as a channel for the connection, for the communication. So I like to be clear and make sure that my energy is grounded and centered.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I do is I will connect in with the human's energy, and I kind of think of it like a triangle. So the two sides are the human and the animal, and then I'm the base, right? And I'm kind of conducting the exchange. So when I connect in with the human, that automatically opens up a channel between me and the human and the connection they would have with the animal. And then the rest of it is through intention. So what I need for a good, clear connection is I need the name of the animal if it's known, but if it's, attached to a human, it usually is. I need to know I like to know the breed or the species. So if we're talking dog, cat, horse, and then I also like to know the age. That's just me. That's personally, if they're in physical form, roughly. Because a dog that is 14 is usually going to present very differently to me than a puppy. So if something were to happen and I started getting this really like wild, crazy energy, I could say, is your dog really still energetic? Now, sometimes that could happen. But generally speaking, I've had animals show up that weren't invited to readings, but there's usually a reason. There's always a reason why they show up. But I've never gotten the wrong one that I know of. And there's usually something that the animal will tell me that there's no way I could have known. And especially, let's say I get somebody who is really doubtful and is like, I don't believe in what you do. I'm not sure that I believe this. I will say to the animal, is there something that you can say to me or show me that I can turn around and use as an example to the human so they will know that this is real? And like a lot of times they'll show me something in the house. Like they'll say, like, a lot, I've had this happen more than once where the dog will take me over and show me where their toy chest is, or they're like, they like this one lady who told me flat out, I don't believe in what you do. I think it's crazy. And, but I'm just satisfying, like, my husband said I should do this. So the dog showed me like where they had this cubby hole with this sort of wicker basket, and there was like a, those balls that are on a rope that people used to play tug of war. There was a red ball that was hanging off the side of the basket. So I'm explaining this to her, and she's like, do you have cameras in my house? How do you know that? Like, well, because the dog's showing me, like, this is so you can believe that this is real. So I can usually ask the animal if they're willing to show me something that would allow me to verify that it's really them.
Thanks.
Sure. Karen.
So a couple of years ago, I like to sit on my patio in the summertime and work, especially at night when it's quiet and you hear all the noise and everything. There was at least one, I think it was one frog that kept showing up, and he'd sit there and watch me work. He'd sit in the middle of the patio. I wouldn't even know he was there. And all of a sudden I looked down this, and he's pretty big. I mean, he was, good size, and he would just sit there and stare at me. So is that, I mean, you say that these animals come into your life to bring a message or to teach you a lesson or something like that. Mm-hmm. Are you talking specifically about domesticated animals or any animal in the wild? So any animal, like any if I have deer running through my yard and eating all my hostas, then that's a message that I shouldn't be planting hostas, right?
Right.
Okay. I'm just curious because this happened, this one particular, I had to be 2 years ago, I think. It felt like this guy was showing up frequently. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was the same one because I'm not a frog, whatever, aficionado. But it looked like, I don't see many frogs. And because I used to make jokes about it, thinking, like the plagues from the Bible, the biblical plagues. Right. I posted on Facebook one time a picture of them, and I said, does that mean that the locusts are next or something like that? And somebody said, well, it takes more than one frog to make a plague. But anyway, he was there. But it seemed like he showed up a lot. And I'm just wondering if that's, is that an example of like an animal that was there to, I don't know what he was teaching me, but.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So a couple of years ago, I'm not a big bird person.
Well, where the hell is he then? The prince upstairs might not be too happy about that.
I'm not a big bird person, but I was just having one of those days where I was like, you know, it started off, my vibration was in the gutter to begin with, and then it devolved to like, oh, poor me, and life sucks, and you know, blah, blah, blah. And so I was out with the dogs, and it was the middle of winter, and you know, the trees were all barren, and it was snowing. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to like trudge around in the snow, and, you know, really just like poor me, pity party. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this red cardinal is sitting in the tree, and there's like the stark contrast between the red cardinal and the barren tree and the snow. And I was like, so taken, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, you're beautiful. And he said, I know. He said, I'm here to remind you that there's joy everywhere. It's just you're choosing not to see it.
Oh, wow.
So now, whenever I see a red cardinal, that for me means like I'm not paying attention to joy. Like I'm not paying attention to what is, or I'm focusing on things that I shouldn't be focusing on, and that I'm missing the joy because I'm choosing not to pay attention to it. So that's, you know, and I have like, you know, like coyote cross my path a lot at night in the car. And you know, they have very specific, I have a lot of fox that cross my path. Even when I'm out walking, I get foxes in front of me, but they all have very specific messages for me, that it's usually a similar theme, you know, that all of them have. But I definitely would say that the frog had a message for you that he or she wanted you to hear. It feels to me like, do you want me to see if I can find out what it was?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
I would love it. I think
I always forget with Zoom, you can't tell I'm looking
Yeah.
directly at you, sorry.
Yeah.
Still getting a little bit used to this. Okay, give me a sec. He wanted you to know that somebody was witnessing how hard you work, and that you appreciated, that your hard work was appreciated.
That's very nice. I like that.
So
Very good. Thank you. That's
So.
very nice. He didn't help me though.
No,
He just wanted to watch.
he's saying that wasn't his job.
Tell him we have to have a chat. Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
Sweet. Elizabeth, did you want to tap into a couple people? I know it's 1 o'clock already, so I don't know who can stay or what can do or what.
Sure. If anybody has like a question, like what with Karen or something like that, I'm happy to connect in, or Donna.
I have a cat that passed.
Okay,
You need to know his name?
I do.
Okie.
Okie. Okay. Do you have a specific question for Okie?
I'm just curious what he'd like to say.
Okay. He's watching you blossom and develop, and he wants you to know that you should have more confidence in yourself than you have. And he's with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sweet.
You're welcome.
I
Yeah.
have it. Oh, go ahead.
I was just curious, do you ever have animals come to you and you find their person and say, so-and-so has a message for you? Or do you usually wait for the human to come to you and say you want to connect? Does that make sense? Where it's like you have an animal in your head and you're like, I got to figure out who the owner is. Like, tell me who they are or where I can find them so that you can connect with them and say, like, I know you've been having a hard time with this or need to be at peace with this and they came to me. Or do you usually wait?
So occasionally, if it's somebody that I know and their animal says, like, I get some sort of information, I will go to the person and say, I think that your animal's trying to tell me something, or it has a message for you. Would you like me to connect in with them? But other than that, if I don't, so here's what I've found. I don't usually get the information unless the human's ready for it. So if I'm in the middle of a session, and sometimes there are some, like I had a session a couple of weeks ago and I was like, oh my God, I suck at this. I'm not getting anything. I usually get such good stuff and I'm not getting that much. And like, what is good? Like, am I having an off day? Did I not prepare right? And so after the session was over, I said to my guides, I'm like, what was that all about? I feel like they just got like the crappiest reading, you know? And what they said was, no, they got exactly what they needed. Like if you tried to give them more, they were not going to be able to hear that. And so their animal didn't give you, like, didn't open up and start spilling like all this information or all this stuff, because the humans were not at a place where they could hear that. So I think in that regard, like it's, you know, I can go to the park and what I'll pick up, or I'll be out with animals. What I tend to pick up on more in those situations is like general feelings. And like it will feel like I get hit with a wall of sadness, right? Like, or the animals like showing me like they're really sad about, like they're trying to help their human work through sadness or something like that. But I tend not to, I can't really say I've ever had like a situation where I'm like, oh, I have to go find this human, because if the human's not open to it, they're not going to hear what I'm saying anyway. And it might actually unglue them a little bit, like, or freak them out, you know? So I try to avoid that if possible. Does anybody
you.
else have? Oh, you're welcome. Erin.
Yeah, actually, I had a dog pass away a long time ago now, but we never actually knew what the cause was, and it was kind of like a crazy, we have no idea. And I'm just curious, is there any way to find out exactly what happened to him, or how he's doing? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, so if it was a while ago, it would probably, that's probably something that I would work with you more directly, because that would take a little bit of time to like get into it and sort of, it's not quite as easy to jump in and out of, but do you want to tell me his name?
Henry Jacob. I actually named my son after him.
Henry, okay. Did he have a ton of energy?
He did when he was little, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm seeing like ping pong back and forth, like this black and white ping pong going back and forth.
Oh, that's our new dog.
Is it?
Yes.
So colors don't always correlate with their physical colors.
Okay.
But it could be your new dog too, but almost like what you would imagine a really fast metronome, like boom, 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 back and forth.
Yes. Yeah, he actually, yeah. He doesn't stay with me anymore. He stays with my ex. I miss him.
So I don't know if this will make sense to you. Like, I can kind of feel Henry there, but he's a little bit distant. Like it would take a little bit more than just a minute or two to connect in with him, but he's there. Like I can sense him. It's just a little bit, the best way I can describe it is it's sort of like if you can think of like the old radios with the knobs, right? And you're trying to get that exact spot because your favorite song is on but it's like going in and out, you get a lot of static and you have to like just really finesse it. Just will take a little bit of finessing, but we can definitely do something with that. So.
Elizabeth, I had a curiosity, only because when I had my Akashic records read, they brought up my childhood dog who had been with me for a long time. Like, can you tap in to see if that's true?
Yeah. What's his name?
I'm curious. His name is Rambo.
Rambo. Okay. Yeah, so he seems to come, I'm seeing like, almost like, a string of beads, right? And they're beads, and it's red. It's a red cord that's connecting the beads. He's been with you in a lot of lifetimes, but he comes to you when you're young, like almost like a child or a teenager.
Mhm.
It's mostly at the beginning part of your life. And he's showing me he's morphing into different, he's been different animals with you in different. He was a donkey once.
I haven't heard that one.
That kind of looks like it was medieval. Looks like he's been a dog several times, but yeah, he's been with you.
Interesting.
So, but he only incarnates once.
Every time in my lifetime.
In your lifetime,
Human?
yeah.
Yeah, he's from when I was a kid. He actually died when I left home. Like, I thought that was kind of curious, but.
You were his purpose for being there. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, and that's why. So
Interesting.
Heather.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Can you do more than one animal when you do readings for people, or you just?
Yes. So oftentimes I'll go in, animals are much like humans, and they can be, they have the personalities. So I'll go to connect in with one animal and I'll get another one that's like kind of like strong arming their way in. Like, no, I'm going to tell the story. Like, that's not really what's going on. So yeah, it's, and a lot of times and this is really beautiful, when people have lost an animal and they're ready, to get another cat or dog, I can call in the animal that's in spirit, and that animal will help guide them to their next dog or cat. It happens more with dogs, but or horse. You really can do it with any animal, but those are the big three that people keep as pets. So
yeah.
So hi, Emery.
Hi, this is also fascinating. Thank you for doing this. You were saying that animals don't really like to communicate that much about trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, like, if you're able to tell, like, if they're happy now. So we have a 6-year-old border collie, Bella, who, we've had, since like she was 8 weeks or something. And I feel like at 6 months, there was something really traumatic that happened to her, but my husband and I don't know because we were actually away. And I've seen like her, like we've seen her personality change. And I'm like, is she happy? Like, I don't know, like, do I need to know what happened? Or like, how do I just make sure she's okay?
Okay, and Bella is her name, you said? Okay. So she's telling me she loves her life now. So was she either in a boarding facility or somebody was taking care of her or watching her? When you guys were
consider something like terribly wrong.
It looks, so the image that I'm getting is that she had an accident. She got scared and had an accident in the house or somewhere inside. And I'm just sort of seeing somebody being really, really gruff with her, really rough, like not abusive, but rough. Like I'm seeing somebody grabbing her collar and dragging her outside, and that totally freaked her out. So if she gets a little bit triggered now, she sort of goes back to a fear state, because it feels like that trauma is trapped. The same thing happens with animals. It happens with human trauma, gets trapped in their body. Mm-hmm. So I can walk you through there are some very easy things that you can do called T-touches. And it helps to sort of reset the reactivity point in their body. So I'm happy to jump on a call and show you how to do that.
That's
Yeah.
so you say that, because sometimes she'll just be fine, and then all of a sudden her eyes just get really big, and we're like, what just happened? Like, you know, and we don't know what's changed. So that, I would love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think it was anything that was like, I mean, it was, you know, probably a lot rougher than what you would have liked. It wasn't anything like, she wasn't hit or abused. But for her, the perception was that it was very terrifying. So now when she was a baby still, right? 6 months. So now she probably goes back to that, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like, you know, so, but there are ways that you can help. Yeah. Well, I'll reach out to you and we can set us and jump on a call. They're super easy. They're called T-touches.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Terrific. Well, we'll wrap it up, and Gail, do you have something you wanted to say? I saw a
I just
hand.
had one more quick question as far as like, if because most of your communication is with pets. If a pet has passed and the pet's owner has passed, can you tell if the pet is with the owner?
So yes, I usually get images. Occasionally I'll have like humans come through. It's not really, I haven't developed that side of it, although I don't think it's really all that different. But occasionally I will have humans come through and I'm kind of like, oh, who's this?
Big energy.
Didn't ask for you. Like, this one lady's grandmother came through once and she was like in Indian garb. And I was like, oh, wow, where's this coming from? But yes, so like when Olivia transitioned, I actually did it at my house. We were out on the deck, and like my father's spirit and my best friend's spirit came and took her spirit as she was leaving her body and like walked off with her. So I knew that like they were together. So yeah, you can, and again, it's kind of thing where like you can always ask, you know, like, are you with whoever, or you know, are you with them? Are you spending time with them? Are you aware of them? Like, you know, so.
Awesome. Thank you.
All
You're
right.
welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So
Thank you.
amazing. Amazing.
Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
And I have such a deeper understanding of what you do, but I'm more amazed at how aligned it is with the human. It's exactly what I experienced on the human side, exactly the same. It's
Wow.
really, yeah, it's very cool. So I was like, oh, well, that makes total sense. It's like one.
Can I just say something real quick?
Yeah.
Elizabeth, the world needs to hear this.
Yeah, well, it's recorded. Yeah.
Thank you.
But you know, per what we were talking about yesterday, the world needs to hear from you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This was really, really incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You can see how gifted you are in helping others. Yeah, the world does
Thank you.
need you.
Well, thank you for giving me the forum to do this and
You are welcome.
get out there and talk to everyone. And I really appreciate it.
You are so welcome. So welcome.